funny.
Yeah. What else you guys got? Anything else, Bobby? Good to see you. Anything else? Any questions like relating to anything sales, anything?
Dean, are you recording?
I am, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, I guess that's it.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, I was talking and I couldn't. I was muted. Sorry. I think too, just in making those lead follow-up calls, just being very concise in those conversations, because I feel like sometimes they can go, it's like you want to get to it. You know what I mean? While you want to get to it in terms of where they're at and taking those next steps or getting a sense of that, but at the same time, managing those conversations. And if it's something that is a kind of an in between where, they're definitely going to do something, but it's not a right now thing. Like I've got one right now that they're doing all this renovation work and it just keeps getting pushed forward with the weather, but they're moving, they're making progress. But so I'm just like trying to be strategic with those touches. Each time I speak with them. Today, I gave her some market update, a 30-day update. So I think sometimes though, just make sure those conversations stay on the rails, what they should be and how they should go. And I think maybe I know you're pretty laser on that. So you want to
do you when you approach your follow-up calls, do you have like a framework that I use like when I just have like there's two directions, or not two directions, but two questions that I ask in every follow-up call?
Yeah, see, that's what I want to get more clear on.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms
All right,
of
cool. Yeah.
what's that direction? Like
yeah, for sure. So it's very simple. Again, I'm trying not to think throughout the day. I just want to take massive action and be high energy, right? So it's based on if you trace the tree the right way from your recent conversations and you have all the right information up to date. So because I'm assuming are you doing this on Mojo? Usually, right? Okay. So you're doing it on Mojo, right? So like if you go on Mojo, then it show when you're making your follow-up calls in your calendar for that day, the contact card should pop right up, and then you should have all the information right there. So before they pick up, you should be reading what you wrote. And so I'll make little notes to myself, and I'll take a little bit of time on that contact card to make sure that I'm posting the notes in there the correct way and say, because if I'm not, because I know myself, if I write something like, not really looking to sell, or they are, but they want this or they want that, whatever, but then I make it now a secondary note to myself saying, try one more time to get an appointment. If not, dump it. Or try to do this and whatever. So I at least know what my agenda is for this particular person. Right? So that's just contact, so if you have that information, you're following up on that. Hey, so last time we had spoken, you had mentioned blah, 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 this and that. Got it. Where are we at with the progress with everything? Right? Right? Okay, got it. And then my bridge to get an appointment, if they say, yeah, no, we're good. Like, I think we're definitely in the right path. And hopefully they just say, hey, what happens next? Or you need to go that direction. But what I actually like to do is, if they don't give me that and they're just kind of like, yeah, we have a couple things here. So there's like two different ways you can, the question is, well, have you guys been following the market? Right? So that is my bridge question to get into an appointment on a follow-up call. So I first checking in on the status of like, hey, have you made the progress that you said you're going to make? I don't care what really they say. If they say yes, great, we just set an appointment. If they say no, we're still working on it, like you said, the construction with the weather, I totally understand that. So let me ask you this, Bobby, because I know, it really depends heavily on the numbers for you guys, right? If there's a financial advantage, and this is the second way I do it, if there's a financial advantage to doing this, maybe almost before you do the work, let's do a coming soon and go that direction. Would that be something you'd be open to? And then if they say yes, or maybe, it kind of depends on then I would say, well, then I would use, have you been following the market recently? Like seeing recent sales? Oh, no, I haven't. No, but got it. Well, and then hopefully you have something that you can just share with them, being like, look, I'm very bullish on the market because of this sale, that comp, etc. And then you can say, well, look, based on have you met with these people, by the way, on that particular
No, I haven't
one?
gotten in front of them yet. It's
Okay,
been a
good.
long-
That's fine.
yeah.
I was actually hoping you would say that, because then I would say, right in that moment, I would say, okay, now that I've used the coming soon more or less, and then I say, have you been following the market? Got you. Now I'm going to ask for the close, which is, well, given that you are open to this, which I highly recommend professionally speaking, let's do this, and I really don't mind. Let's get together so that I can at least see what you're working on, so that I can make any really, suggestions on the improvements or what you're trying to do here. And then let's just see, I mean, what does your schedule look like, this week? So depending upon their, or like, the time frame that they already have for selling, again, this is just for me to go there, to get in front of them, to try to see what I can do there. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So,
also bring that in closer to, even if you
right, so
still
it's
don't get
basically
it.
like, have you made the progress from what you told me last time, and from all the information download that I have on my contact card? And then, have you been following the market? Gotcha. Well, I think we should do this, based on, I think it's appropriate that you and we set up a time this week then to do this, generally speaking, and then I would go into the actual close there.
Great.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
what I would
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Gotcha. Anything else before I get into playing my messages with my good friend Dan Mum here?
Yeah, that
Any
looks
other
good.
questions? Lincoln, I saw you pop on. Justine, anybody?
Wait, Dean, yeah, I have a question about
Sure.
I was gonna ask, we were talking about, I think like last week, Wednesday, we were talking about trying to show value in you as an agent. And like I find that, I mean, even as a teacher, if I want to show parents that I actually like care about, their kids or their kids' education, I'll usually like, and it's also like in a time of like maybe like if I'm in a tight spot, a parent's like really stressed, like their kid's failing. I usually give them like my personal number. Would you recommend like maybe giving out personal numbers? Like if you know that like a lead is like hot, or if you know that like you're going to get this person as your client, like would you recommend like, hey, here's my personal number, like you can call me anytime? Like I feel like that really kind of tells the client like, oh wow, like this person's valuable to me, like they're giving me like their personal time and like space.
Can I ask you a question of when you're calling and making your calls, what number are you calling from?
Well, yeah, I do call from my personal number, but like if I'm like, say if I'm like calling from like the office, or if I'm calling from like like another number that like they can't really see, like would that be like a good like tactic as to like showing value
Yeah.
or like trying to get someone on your side?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I use that line too. I say, this is my personal cell. This is
Okay,
my,
yeah.
I actually say that. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking about that, and it just kind of crossed my mind as I was like on the phone with a parent, and I was just like, you know what? I think I'm gonna give her my personal number, like just kind of stay more in touch, because her son is failing for the second marking period.
Yeah.
So I
Well, what
said,
you do is, that's like, to me, real work. I mean, we're just having
yeah,
conversations about real estate as a real estate agent. So
yeah,
it just somehow it pays better, but yet teachers, I mean, my
yeah.
wife is one. I mean, damn, dude, she puts up a lot of shit. That's all I can say. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of tears, a lot of stress, but I
yeah.
think like if I can see like maybe if I'm like on a different number and a client's maybe stressed about like their purchasing power, maybe not being able to find something in a time frame, maybe I can say like, hey, why don't I give you my number? You can stay more in touch with me. I'm on my phone all the time, so you can call me. And I think like that would be kind of like a good in. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was thinking
however you
about
want to
that
do it,
aspect.
you'd be like, hey, look, I'm calling, or if you are calling from your personal cell, just say, hey, the good news is I'm calling you from my personal cell. So that way
Yeah,
you can text me here, you can call me here. You're always going to get me here, because I want to make sure that you're
yeah.
going to get the right, service that we can provide here. So
Yeah, so from what I hear is like I feel like most of the calls I make from my personal number anyways, like as long as maybe if I like acknowledge like, hey, this is my personal number, so you can call back at any time, like that would probably be the best way to go about that. Yeah, that's pretty
cool.
much all I got. Yeah.
Dean, I have a question as it
Sure.
comes to pricing properties. I have an appointment I'm going to, and I'm a little concerned that I cannot get any comparables in the area. The approach I usually take is ask them to get someone to appraise the property. What is your take on that? Or should I just find some way to get some comparables somewhere around the area?
Mm. It sounds like a pretty unique property. Is that what I'm hearing?
It seems to be pretty unique.
Okay.
He has a price at 2.175
Okay.
million. And
That
then
was my next question. How high end is this? Because if it's really like in your market, if 2.1 is ultra luxury or it's very luxury in that price range, then I would suggest doing the appraisal. Yes, 100%. If it was below a million or like at least in our area below 800,000, like I'm not ever gonna recommend doing that. It's just too much in the. But for something like that, for that price point, yes,
okay.
that would be a good. That actually probably would be the best way to go about that. And if you're not finding comps, I mean, for houses, it's also a lot different because houses, there are some nuances and uniqueness to every house, especially at that level that like you do have that like you can kind of use. Um, and that's really what your gut, like you just kind of knowing the market. I would suggest previewing a few homes before you go into that appointment if you have time. And I honestly, and now I'm saying this to you prior to you going on, the appointment the same day, right? I
Yes.
I mean, to me, I would finish up your lead follow for the day and kind of take a detour on your schedule then and go and see if you can preview 3 to 4 homes prior to getting in there.
Okay. The only thing is that that house was built last year. So apparently the person built the house to sell.
Okay. All right. I mean, try to find some then newer construction or new construction that you can go and take a look. No, take and then also find out the profile of this. I'm assuming it's a builder then.
He may have a company, but he just seemed to be a private individual.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I would then just take that and the comps and everything, like it's all nuanced and maybe you'll do a 2-step on this one as opposed to just like giving them the price to try to close it right there on the spot. And sometimes you have to look at that. And I would just come from the place of pure curiosity. Just be like, hey, you did this to this house. What made you want to do that? Or hey, I see this little nuance here compared to other things that I've seen. And if you can't get physically in person to these other previews before this appointment, then just take your time and limit your prospecting for the day just because it's a big appointment and actually take an hour and a half to sit through online like everything you can you could potentially see
Okay.
and really assess it. Like give yourself permission to do that. I think for anything that you have as long as there's a high motivation that I verified, which you're going to hear from my friend Dan, by the way, which is funny that we're talking about this, and you have a high price property, big commission check coming potentially, take your time with it. It's worth it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
I have
Yep.
one thought, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trained in other roles. When you can't do something, also focus on what you can do. So at least you can step through and show that you know the school district it's in. Maybe the lot perimeter is abnormal, and you could say, "Hey, look, this may have an effect on it." Where it is in a subdivision, so when you talk about things that detail, they know that, hey, he has an idea, but he can't give an exact price. And then he's suggesting, an appraiser do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not necessarily just, I don't know, pass it off. You are showing some competence.
Yeah. And then Lincoln too, like if you feel like, you know what, I kind of get a pretty good idea of this property on the spot. And even if you don't have all the right comps, let's say per se, just, use your gut and confidence, to just say something to them right there on the spot, I mean, but yeah, I would recommend doing the appraisal, or having them do that, along with you having a more deeper knowledge about the market. And this is what happens, right, guys? Lincoln, because like this is what I always talk about being prepared. This is why we want to do the homework. We want to do the role plays. We want to do the previewing. We want to do all these different things. It seems, like it's menial or it doesn't really require a lot of it. But these are all the things that you do as homework to have this deep knowledge of being a market expert in your area, right? And this is what I keep on talking about, harping with you guys, because then opportunities like this come up and you got to be ready for it. And it's not going to be where it's going to be like, so easy. And frankly, Lincoln, just on another note, if you feel, don't feel like you have to be the authority around the price. If there's anything I can share with you, is try your best not to like, even if you guys are vibing and there's chemistry with this seller, take the listing. Because I rather you have something, especially you're in a new market and everything like that, I would recommend that you take the listing for something you can reduce and work on later. If it's really like all of a sudden, like you get no showings in the first month or first 2 weeks, and you're like, what's going on? Well, let me check all my marketing. Is it all that working? Is all that, you know what I mean? And you do all those different things, because then you have something that you can work on, as opposed to just like, as long as there's motivation there. But if you built it to sell, this guy sounds like he wants to sell. You see what I'm saying? So as long as the connection with that client is there, then I would take that listing, even if he's like, can we try 2.2? Can we try a little bit higher? Like, but sometimes, like, honestly, guys, like, the closing happened. I mean, hopefully we got funded. I mean, I don't know, Teddy, let me know about this reservoir deal, but we got, I mean, it happened. And it actually closed from that 1.6 that I took that ended up selling for 1.2, because again, I saw the motivation. You know, the motivation was there, and this guy sounds like he's motivated. So I was okay taking a little bit higher. You know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is. And sometimes you have to do that. And that's just part of the assignments. I mean, if I took listings that only in this market climate that I said this is what it's going to sell for X, number one, I've been wrong before many times on price. And number two, appraised value, market value, completely different things. What I think looks like shit, the market could say, I love this is beautiful. So when I hear these like old school agents always talking about price and like they think they know something, you don't know jack shit, dude. You don't know how the market's going to respond to how this is. And even buyers, like I have no idea why I have over asking price on 118 Jefferson. It is the most basic condo of a one bedroom you can get in Hoboken right now, and yet I have over asking already. Why? Why? I can't make that shit up. But some buyers just want to like do it. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like shit like this, just like vibe with the clients, get that chemistry going, and then you'll be just fine. It's always how do we position ourselves to make the most amount of money in the moment? And to me, in this case, you got to do what you got to do. Now, on that note, before I forget to play this for you before we end here today. So my friend Dan Mumm and I, if you guys look them up, MUMM, okay? He's in the Mike Fair retreat this week, by the way. So we were just talking. He asked me, like, are you going to be coming? Because he wanted to get together and do stuff. And I was like, sorry, I'm not, part of it anymore and don't really see any value. So I'm not going to really go. But I think Lincoln, you probably know him too. You might have met him too at some point. But basically, I asked him, I said, what is one thing? Because he made 1.3 million last year net in his pocket. That was his best year ever, net. Okay, not like this is, he has made like $1.1 million, $1.05 million, 900s a lot of times, but then he had like a team and he kind of, anyway. So this was his best financial year ever. And he fired his whole team, by the way. He ended up going into, this was like about a year and a half ago though. And then he ended up just doing personal production, have great staff, and just kind of go that route with it, right? Now, I asked him, because I'm a big question guy. Of course, I always want to know, like, so my question to him was, what was one thing you feel you did really well in 2024 to basically get these results? And I'm just gonna play you a couple of these messages. They're like a few minutes long, but I wanted you to hear what he says from his mouth, so you can hear what I heard, and I want to see what you guys catch on this. And if we still have time, we'll discern amongst each other what he said. And then he did say he'll come on one of our meetings as a favor and be like, hey, I want to talk to you guys and talk to the agents about what this looks like. So let me just play this for you.
Hey, sorry, I was thinking about your question. I would say the thing that I probably did best in 24 was
Can you guys hear it?
only working with 9s and 10s on a motivation scale, not working with 8s, 7s, or 6s anymore. Just simplified my business dramatically, took all the guesswork out of it, all the maybe, possibly, not really sure if someone's motivated or not because they're posturing and you can't really tell. It's just, I mean, some of those deals do convert, but for me, it just was way easier for me to simplify the business dramatically. It allows me to charge more, better repeat referral rate, better client satisfaction, just working with the 9s and 10s, better staff enjoyment, less staff turnover, less mistakes being made, all of that. So that was a good move. And then also just made it a switch in my schedule. I don't know if I talked to you about this before, but working on price reductions every day as opposed to once a week. I was just procrastinating doing it once a week and never wanted to do it. So I do all my most vital calls first before my prospecting, because those are the ones that I was procrastinating. So any tough calls that I have to make, I line them up to be right in the beginning of the day before I start prospecting. And that helps lighten up my schedule, increase customer satisfaction, minimize problems and headaches and distractions, because all of the tough work was kind of out of the way, and then the staff was able to take it from there. So yeah, want to hear what your answers and what your thoughts are.
Hold on. That was the first message.
Yeah, first point, what I mean by 9s and 10s are people that have to.
So I had asked him in between that. I said, what do you consider a 9 and 10? Why is it a 9 and not just a 10? Like, what's that gap there between a 9? Because to me, I would take an 8 and a 9 probably all day long. What makes the difference there?
Maybe possibly if I get the right price, just absolutely have to sell, or not working with them, to keep it crystal clear. And then I guess a third thing was more community marketing. That's really made a big difference. More events, making the business a people business and a community business first, and a real estate business second, has really helped dramatically with getting more out of the database. I just signed a $3 million listing in my neighborhood from an event that I did over the summer. It was it cost me $2,000. I had an In-N-Out truck come to the neighborhood, and just got that deal out of it, and a lot of other goodwill and relationships came out of it too.
Cool. Now, that right there, I mean, is like a coaching call, right? That you can hear that, right? He's doing more community events, but really is on that. And so I went one layer deeper. And I said, because, we talk about following people's behaviors, not what always, what they say. And so he had a really interesting point about this. So the beginning is just, I asked him, hey, do you mind coming on like a sales meeting and things like that? But I wanted you guys can all hear this, right? You guys are all like able to listen, and it's clear coming through. So here.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. We just have to schedule it. But yeah, let me know. I'm happy to do that. Jump on a quick call. If we plan for it, I could do it in the morning, or we can record it, either way. Good questions. I looked at the source thing really carefully, because I had a feeling in my head that, like, okay, certain sources and certain channels and certain pipelines that I have are bringing in better yield stuff. And generally speaking, that's true. But overall, dude, I found that there were 9s and 10s in every lead source that I worked. And there were also complete waste of time churning deals that cost us a lot of time and effort and energy that came from every source. Certain ones are better than others, but the bottom line that I found was that it's not really a source question. That's why you want to have a lot of lead sources and pipelines, because you just want to make sure you're looking for the right thing. Instead of solving for the source, I started solving for the motivation. And
I asked him, are there specific sources that are more 9s and 10s? That's why he's answering this way.
They can all work. You just want to make sure you're finding the right. All my decision making with regard to what type of people I want to work with all comes down to the motivation. Doesn't matter if I think they're a pain in the ass, or the same type of person as me or not, or maybe not the right fit in other ways. As long as the motivation's there, nothing else really matters. As far as what is different between 9 and 10, yeah, I think the old guideline that coaches used to talk about were like 8s or above. I guess that's why I say 9 or 10. So basically 10 is like desperate, need to sell quickly. 9 is like not desperate, but definitely needs to sell. 8 is like want to sell, but not really in a rush, but have a pretty strong desire to sell. 7 is like, if I got the right price, I would sell, but not outside of that. That's kind of like my barometer, I guess you could say. But yeah, hopefully that helps. As far as the long-term nurture stuff, I don't really do a lot of that. I think that it just takes a lot of time. And the only time I spend personally, Dan Mum, on speaking to people on the phone and talking to people, is someone who's either ready to sell right now, or they just need a little bit of a nudge to like get them over the hump. Anything more than a slight nudge, it's not worth, from a business building or enterprise standpoint, for me to be convincing and talking and following up with over and over and over again. I just think there's so much of an abundance of sellers who are ready right now that to spend time talking to anyone else just really doesn't make a lot of business sense. It doesn't mean you have to throw them out. what I've done kind of successfully is I have other people call, which I know you've done in the past. I just kind of caught on to that this year, where I have someone that I pay $8 an hour that just calls my long-term follow-ups and just they'll call 100 at a time, and I'll get maybe one or two that raise their hand out of that. And that's worth my time calling. But I used to spend my time calling those groups, and it's just a big fucking waste of time. There's just not enough. You could easily spend that time on new stuff, new for sale by owners, new expireds, new people in your database, probate attorneys, family law attorneys, all that, and find deals right away. So that's what I've been focused on.
Okay, that was a little bit longer, but now there was so hold on one second. So my last question. So okay, hold on. So far, do you guys have any comments on what he just said?
Yeah, basically what I gathered in terms of what he's saying is it reminded me of eat that frog, meaning that the thing that is least desirable, which may bring you the greatest results, you need to do it first. And secondly is look for motivation.
100%.
Yeah, it's all motivated. And he doesn't care about their personality types. And
Yeah,
I
all
thought
the
that
other
was a
things that
fun,
we
yeah. I
right,
love
all the like
first-time home
basically,
buyers.
and it's funny how we talk about being simple, right? Simplicity and getting back to this like just not thinking like very just this is what we keep talking about, and yet he's doing it to having one of his best financial years ever. And so yeah, so that was one.
And I think the babysitting, I think that's
Yeah.
a huge get out of that. I'm wrapped into that world, and I'm trying. I want to get
Yeah,
out
we
of
just
that.
because, but I want you to hear something funny. This is the last thing I'm going to share with you guys, and I really want you to hear this because I forget what I actually asked. I'll send you the voice in if you want, but like he answered it. But speaking about babysitting, this is what it goes back to. So let me just play this last part.
Okay, that's a really good question, and that's exactly what my concern was with doing this in the beginning. It's funny how you could tell someone's a legit producer, not based on the types of questions that they ask. That's how I know for a fact that you're in there doing this, because that question is exactly like spot on.
Like basically, I was concerned about fallout.
I mean, you do definitely have to go based on behavior and not what people say, for sure. That's definitely a thing. You get more judgment as you know doing it more. So I don't think there's a clear answer to that. You get more judgment when you sell more and you know what to look for and not look for, and what types of things people say when they might not necessarily mean it, what actions to look for. But generally speaking, I'm not going too far to play therapist and try and figure out what they really mean if they're telling me something different. You mentioned something interesting about if they're being fuzzy on the prequel. If they're not giving me straight answers on that, then I definitely don't go. That's kind of my first litmus test. But sometimes, even if they answer you clearly, they're still kind of giving you unclear answers, or maybe they're posturing. I guess that's the bigger issue, is when they're posturing, telling you they don't need to sell, but the reason for selling is strong, like a divorce or death in the family or a job loss, but you know for a fact that they're going to need to. So yeah, you have to use your judgment in those situations. And I would still consider that a 9 or 10, because when I'm saying 9 or 10, I'm looking at the reason for selling, not necessarily what they're telling me, but the reason for selling. And sometimes they don't know how motivated they are up front either. So yeah, sorry, I can't really give you a good answer on that. I think I'm talking in circles, but generally speaking, yes, you got to go based on actions for sure, and look at reasons for selling as the number 1, number 2, and number 3 thing. But I've kind of gotten away from trying to read too far into it. If I'm spending too much time trying to figure it out and I don't get a good gut feeling right off the bat, I'm just done with it. You can do it. You can sell successfully to those people. You could chase them down, convince them, play therapist, read through it. People do that. I've done that. It's just not what you want to build your business around, right? Like, you want to build your business around people that are just dead obvious from the pain is just extremely clear. The more pain, the more you get paid. So if you build your business around that, I think it takes care of a lot of the other issues where you don't have to really focus on it as much or deal with it as much.
So there you go. You heard it from him. I mean, that's a real conversation, not on stage, not like some, in his words, posturing type of way to, like, get more referrals, let's say, from the crowd. this is like a legitimate producer, right? Like hearing what he would just said, right? So, yeah, I know we went a little bit over time here, but I wanted you guys to hear that. Does anyone have any other takeaways from listening to that?
I mean, I know the meaning of motivation, but then he said the person's reason for selling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that there is just reason for selling is so simple, but it just magnifies motivation to a whole new level for me. I never really processed it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a great yeah, that's it, man. I mean, that's why I think articulated it what we work on a lot better than I could in a concise way. You know what I mean? But he basically, I like his wording of posturing. That's really what people are doing on these appointments. Or Lincoln, when you meet this person for 2.1, or Bobby, any of the high end stuff, or it doesn't matter, anybody, they're just posturing because they could be like, well, I don't want this agent to take advantage of me. I don't want there's a lot of fear around what happens in the appointment. But so what he's basically saying is his whole focus, and there's the last piece of the voice note that you didn't hear, but I'm not going to play because of just the time that we have here. But I want you guys to realize, he goes, well, the only reason I'm able to do this, because I said to him, I was like, well, how do you afford to only look at 9s and 10s? How do you afford to only not babysit people? But guess what he said? Because he prospects every day. He's constantly filling up the pipeline. He's not worrying about his next deal because he can count on himself to show up and make it happen. And so that's where the babysitting, the playing therapist, and there's all these different things, and nurturing people is what most agents do. And prospectors like us, or people that come from a Mike Ferry mindset or a Watson Powers kind of thing, you get in this zone and there's a next level. And I always thought oh, well, you have a big team, that's why you're producing this much, or you do this. But then I hear guys like him that still exist, and he's younger than me. You know what I mean? And it's so funny. It's this can still happen if you have the right focus. But this is why we talk about focus and not going off the rails, because he's so focused on his schedule, so focused on what he does, but he constantly prospects, and he's so organized that he doesn't have to, and he has a simple schedule. I mean, that's something that I'm going to continue. I love sharing this stuff, honestly, because no one's ever shared any of this shit with me when I was coming up. So if I can do this for you guys, and really, it's just yeah, I mean, it's really important to know that guys like this still, that's great. Look at that. I mean, copy and paste that, whatever Bobby just sent. And that right there is a coaching training in and of itself. Don't be scared to work with 9s and 10s. And that's what Justine and I last year, we worked on a lot. If you remember, we worked a hell of a lot on the focusing on what's a real lead, what's not, and getting rid of all that fluff. And by the way, this goes with buyers too. I mean, I have a polite way of asking their motivation, which is so motivation is the reason to sell, right? To Lincoln's point, it's this, but what's the biggest benefit to buying even? What are you getting out of this? If you can't convince me of a good reason why you're doing it, then there's no reason for us to basically to meet. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get to that question on the phone, or it takes shorter, but either way, that's the crux of what we need to be doing, and need to be, focused on. Just because they come in on a fast expert or ideal agent, or they come in through and they're an expired or a FSBO, what he basically just confirmed is that sources don't really matter as much as long as you're finding enough people that are 9s and 10s. And there's ways to kind of find it, but everyone gets stuck on the source and then they babysit, right? This is what's happening. They get stuck on the sources, and we all do this, even me. We get stuck on the sources, and then you just babysit those leads because you're well, I have all the sources, so I'm good with my sources. And I have forewarned, so I know I'm talking about the right person. But then you're in purgatory, and that's why you're not getting to the next level, because you're not being honest with yourself to prospect for new business constantly, because you're look how many follow-ups I have. And it's they're not paying you. You know what I mean? And so, but it's scary. When I made that shift and I was yeah, I'm good. Honestly, I actually equate to, before I had all you beautiful people with me, honestly, that we were doing this together, I mean, the couple years that I was doing it, Teddy, no, I was so quick. I mean, people think I'm quick now with my leads. I was quicker. I have to get back to that actually. And that's what made us do, I think it was, what was it, Teddy? 67 deals I did personally that year with a volume of like 41 something like million. I mean, and but I was so like on this mindset. It was just like, okay, what's your reason for selling? What's your motivation? Not good? All right, I'm out of here. See ya. Next. And I was so fast with that. But I'm now training and coaching you guys and everything, so I forget little things like this. But my awesome friends remind me of everything that makes them successful, and going back to that. Yeah, I saved all these voice memos too. If you want me to send it to you, you could hear it yourself later. I mean, that's totally fine. So anyway, sorry to keep it for 40 minutes today, but I hope you guys took a lot of great things from that. And this is again why we want to network with the right people. And by the way, just so you know, I met Dan Mum. It was early days of him coming up. Like, you know what I mean? So you don't know who you meet at these events, and you want to just get to know certain people. It's funny, we were both coming up, even though I'm older. Age doesn't matter. Like, obviously, Bobby and I have talked about this. It's like you're on the path, you're on the path. So go get them, guys, and we will make it happen. Cool. See ya.